A common alternate history, sometimes one that even leads to an Axis victory in World War II, is Spain joining the Axis. I mean, on paper it makes a lot of sense. Spain was an ultra-nationalist nation like Italy and Germany, and in fact, during the lead up to World War II, it was German and especially Italian aid sustaining the nationalists during their civil war. After the civil war ended, it was a mere couple of months before the start of the World War. Less than a year later, France fell and the tides of the conflict seemed on Germany's side, as nations began to negotiate entry into the Axis, and Spain was no different. But before we dive into the content, today's sponsor is Manta Sleep, your ultimate companion for resting. With their big selection of various sleeping masks, anyone can find one that they can appreciate, whether it be a simple design or a more advanced one with Bluetooth included, allowing you to fall asleep to your favorite music or podcast. They are very comfortable to wear, and as you can see, it is very easy to switch between various designs should you have multiple different masks. So, I would suggest you treat yourself to a better sleep and join the pro nap movement via my link in the description. Using the code POSSIBLEHISTORY at checkout, you will get a 10% discount while also helping out the channel, so thank you. Now Franco was quite a hardball in negotiations, especially later on. But initially, his demands were pretty limited. Mostly French Morocco and Cameroon, as well as Gibraltar. Germany though, at this point, still convinced of their ability to destroy the British, did not pursue the Spanish offer. Especially since the German dictator wanted Cameroon back for Germany, and so considered the Spanish offer insulting. This would be the final serious chance for a Spanish entry into the war. As the conflict dragged on, Churchill refused to surrender, and American lend-lease started to come in. Germany's swift victory started looking far less swift. Meanwhile, Britain and America were using economic blackmail to keep Spain neutral. Final negotiations saw Spain demand way too much from Germany, potentially on purpose to be able to remain neutral. Negotiations got so heated that Germany even threatened to annex Spanish territories into Vichy France. Negotiations broke down and Spain never entered the war at all. Yet, let's assume right after the collapse of France, this initial offer, focused on Morocco and Cameroon, was accepted by Germany, and the Spanish joined the war on the Axis side. I hope that I can convince you how terrible of a move this would be from the Axis perspective. First, the Spanish demands on Morocco and Cameroon are satisfied, meaning Spain is annexing Vichy French territory. This is pretty minor, but it does help to further discredit Vichy France's regime, proving that they are a mere German puppet and not an ally of the German regime. Besides this, little of value is gained for the Axis. The Spanish army was outdated and weak, racked with years of a civil war. Besides, Franco wouldn't commit Spanish soldiers to much more than defensive actions and a couple divisions against the Soviet Union. Sure, the Axis would now manage to cut off Mediterranean shipping for Britain, but even that is not too big of a deal. Even in our timeline, with Italian threats on the Suez and submarine actions in the Mediterranean, British shipping in the region became too dangerous. Going around Africa, though longer and more costly, is not causing the short-term collapse of Britain. From here, Spain's loyalty to the Axis is proven rather weak. German demands to starve Spanish Morocco and Spanish islands to bother the British ships with are denied, as Franco is too proud for this. Franco, content with his gains, mostly focuses on reinforcing his coast. The war for Spain is relatively calm, until 1942. By this time, the African theater is already swinging in the British favor, with French resistance fighters and British soldiers even capturing Spanish Cameroon. Now though, Operation Torch is planned. An invasion of North Africa sees Spanish defenses in Morocco collapse, and invasion of Algeria causes the near full destruction of the Axis in North Africa. By this point, the true drag of Spain has to become very clear, as Churchill was a big proponent of the Southern strategy. Now in this timeline, before all of North Africa is even conquered yet and an invasion of Italy can begin, Churchill has an even better target: Spain. A nation weak out of a civil war, even closer to Allied territories for easier invasion, and anti-Francoist fighters, now supplied by Britain, still fighting guerrilla wars in Iberia. The invasion of Italy is delayed, while an invasion of Spain is launched. Soon, all of the southern flatlands fall to the Allies, as the resistance movements become a near full civil war. Even Franco's internal allies begin to seriously question his rule. I imagine that by the end of 1943, Spain would have mostly collapsed, Franco's government being gone. German soldiers stabilize the situation for now, setting up a Spanish puppet regime, but things aren't looking good. Meanwhile, the invasion of Italy, while slightly delayed, also happens. And much like in Spain, the Allied advance manages to get to such a point that their dictator is deposed, with again Germany having to intervene. While I think it is absolutely possible that Germany can at least halt both invasions, these German soldiers have to come from somewhere else. The more soldiers fighting in Iberia and Italy, the fewer are defending the coasts or defending against the quickly accelerating Soviet advance. I'm sorry for the quick intermission, but by far most of you aren't subscribed. To keep up to date with all the latest releases, consider doing so. Thank you. So by this point, things are looking bad for Germany. Aside from the obvious, most of German tungsten comes from Portugal and Spain. Tungsten is an important material for anti-tank weapons and hard industry. This supply is now heavily reduced, weakening Germany yet further. By this point, their only two major European allies have fallen and are only propped up by German soldiers. From three sides, the allies are advancing on Germany, and let me tell you a secret, two more are being planned. The real coup de grace for the allies in this timeline. Operation Overlord and Operation Dragoon, the invasions of North and South France respectively. Now I must say, I hope for Germany's sake that before these invasions begin, they had already departed most of Spain. Because imagine this, allies land in France and begin to seriously advance. Soon, the German soldiers are cut off from supply lines and everything not already evacuated is captured by the allies. Let's be charitable and say that the Germans evacuated a decent amount. This encirclement would still go down in history as one of the biggest military embarrassments of the war. YouTubers decades later will make videos on what if Spain didn't join the Axis to prevent these terrible defeats. Anyways, from here, the German collapse is likely even swifter than in our timeline, with not just the West advancing faster, but the Soviets too, due to additional German resources shifted west. Nothing crazy fundamentally changes in the larger peace deal or the spheres of influence after the war, as those had already largely been agreed to far before the war was over, but still, Spain now has to be dealt with, which definitely means losing their colonial possessions. Both colonies around Morocco would be awarded to the French Protectorate of Morocco, and the little Central African colony likely goes to France as well. In Europe then, ultranationalism is totally crushed, rather than survive in Spain. A republican government is restored to power, likely, at least initially, moderately left-wing, striking a balance between the West and the East during the Cold War. Yet, much like in most of the free world, as the Cold War becomes more and more serious, and the Soviet Union does things like invading Hungary and later Czechoslovakia to enforce their version of communism, other socialist movements, like those in Spain, break away from the Soviets. Without Franco in power, Spain's future is likely far brighter during this time. Immediately after World War II, Spain benefits from the Marshall Plan boosting their economy. Then, a program of European integration is started, and Spain, as a major war-torn nation, would be more than welcome to join, either immediately or during the first rounds of expansion. So, all in all for Spain, this timeline is pretty great. 4 decades of Franco are replaced with democracy and European partnership. Of course, there is always a chance that Spain wastes the opportunities presented to them, but I cannot predict decades of alternate politics. Still, things look far better for our southern European state. For now though, this is the end of the video. Thank you all for watching, and consider leaving a like and a comment, as well as subscribing. If you've enjoyed this video, click on the video on top to watch another one in this series. If you've already seen it, then I'm sure the bottom one is great too. Once again, thank you all for watching, and goodbye.